Haribo, please accept my most humble obeisances. All glorious to Srila Prabhupada. This is Jadhacharya Das. I'm going to put this story to rest because I know personally what happened during that period of time. I was in Raman Reti and I was serving there, helping to build the basic foundation of the temple in 1972. I remember one day I was alone, sitting at in my little room, and suddenly I found a knock at the door. I opened it up, and there were a number of Indian military officers, and they came in, and I was sitting on my bed, and I spoke with them, and they asked me specific questions. I, at the time, had no idea what was happening because, being a young man, I was, as Prabhupada said, even to your enemy, you become honest and you tell them the truth. They asked me specifically, what did we think about Indira Gandhi and about the Indian government? At that time, I had no idea what was going on, but they were technically probably the ones who were going to come and ask and find out, or at least part of the investigation by the Indian government to determine if we were CIA, because technically there was no way for them to understand at that time what we really were doing and who Prabhupada really was. So I spoke to them and I told them exactly what Prabhupada had always said to us, that we understand that all of these governments, no matter who or what they are all bogus, that our real goal is to be able to reinstate the Varnashram Dharma system based on the principles of Vedic culture, which had always been in place, and that in order to actually have a good leader, that we need to always have a king who is fixed in devotional service and who is following the principles of the Raja, of the kings, as in olden times. And that all of these modern day philosophies and governments are all nonsense. And I spoke very clearly and told them exactly how all of this was happening. And that we did not think that any of them were qualified to actually govern because of their characteristics. For the most part, they're all demons, and that we simply were following the instructions of Srila Prabhupada based on the Krishna conscious philosophies. Technically, that's what I explained to them, and I said it as a young brahmachari, honest, to the extent that I was following Srila Prabhupada's instructions. And I remember that there was a Sikh and there was a Vaishnava officer. Well, the Vaishnava officer was very moved, and he wanted to offer me some dakshin. The Sikh officer didn't want him to offer anything. At that time, Sikhs were very adamant. They were not necessarily very friendly towards us. Of course, there were some who were very, very capable, and according to the Sikh religion, they were supposed to help to protect the Vedic and the Vaishnava philosophies. However, this one Sikh officer, he didn't want this other Vaishnava officer to offer me any Lakshmi. So after that conversation, he left. They both left. They all left. Actually, there were about 4 or 5. It was actually about 5 of them. And a few minutes later, the Vaishnava devotee came back and he offered me some Lakshmi, because evidently he knew, he understood. He is a very sincere soul. And a few weeks later, it was stated in the Congress of India that no, these Hare Krishnas are not CIA. It was very clear. I hadn't even thought about that, and I never said anything to anyone. I never told, I didn't at that time I was just doing what I thought was necessary because that was my instructions. Prabhupada had very clearly described exactly what to say because that was what he had told us specifically. And I told them specifically what I just repeated to you. So the whole concept of how and why that finally came to fruition, I don't know if that was because of some of the things that I had said to these officers, but I can guarantee you that if a number of military men show up asking these type of questions, they weren't on parikram, they weren't visiting the holy dhams, because if they had been, that one Sikh officer wouldn't have been involved. So that's exactly what happened. And like I said, a few weeks later, they decided they were no longer considering us to be CIA. And of course, we have proved that. Now, whether there's CIA or not inside of our ISKCON, FBI, I have to say yes, I would say that someone had to have been watching because they didn't know what we were. And if they did, I hope they became a little Krishna conscious. In either case, this is the story that I would like to contribute to this narration and this consideration of whether there were CIA in ISKCON. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Again, this is Jadhacharya Das, your eternal servant. Hare Krishna.